He was a busy man, a single father. His days were full of meetings, calls, and business trips. Ever since his wife had passed away in an accident 2 years ago, life had become quiet. Too quiet. His little son was only 4 years old. He needed care, warmth, and someone to help him grow in a home that had grown cold. The man had tried his best. He tried to play with his son after work, read him bedtime stories, and cook breakfast on weekends. But deep down, he knew something was missing. The house didn't feel like a home. So he hired a nanny. She wasn't like others. She was quiet, calm, and gentle. She didn't talk much, but the child liked her from the first day. She would sit with him when he cried. She would hum soft lullabies at night. The boy would run to her whenever he fell down or got scared. She was careful with everything, clean, polite, and always respectful. At first, the father felt relief. He finally had someone to help. But after a few weeks, he noticed something strange. Every night, when she thought no one was watching, she would go into the kitchen. Not just for water or food. She would open the same cupboard again and again. It wasn't even a big cupboard. Just a small old one near the fridge. The first time he noticed, he thought nothing of it. Maybe she needed something. Maybe she had a habit. But when it happened again the next night, and then the night after, his mind started to ask questions. Why that cupboard? Why at night? Was she hiding something there? He tried to stay calm. He told himself, don't jump to conclusions. But the thought didn't leave his mind. One night, after she left the kitchen, he quietly went there and opened the cupboard. It was mostly empty. Just a few cans of soup, some salt, and an old recipe book, nothing else. He checked behind the cans, under the shelf, nothing. He felt silly. But then, it happened again, and again. She didn't know he had cameras installed. Just two, one at the hallway and one facing the kitchen. He checked the footage and watched her. Every time the child fell asleep, she would walk slowly into the kitchen and open the cupboard. She didn't take anything. She didn't put anything in. She just looked inside and stood there for a few seconds. Now he was sure. Something was wrong. His friends had warned him. Don't trust strangers with your child, they said. You never know what's in their heart. The man was not cruel, but he had seen enough in life to know that sometimes it's better to act early than regret later. The next evening, he came home earlier than usual. The nanny had just put the boy to bed. He walked into the kitchen, and there she was. Her hand was on the cupboard handle. She turned and gasped when she saw him. What are you doing? He asked, his voice sharp. She didn't speak. Her eyes looked nervous, like she'd been caught doing something wrong. That's it, he said, anger rising. You're done here. I don't care what excuse you have. I trusted you with my son. She opened her mouth to explain, but closed it again. Instead of fighting or defending herself, she slowly nodded. She walked to her room, packed her small bag, and came to the living room. The boy was standing at the edge of the stairs, holding his stuffed toy. His eyes were wide. Are you going? He asked the nanny softly. She smiled, knelt, and hugged him tightly. Be brave, okay? She whispered. Just like your mom wanted. The father felt something in his chest when she said that. But his pride didn't let him speak. He stood quietly as she walked out the door. That night, the boy refused to sleep. He kept asking for the nanny. He cried in bed, saying she used to read him mommy letters. The man didn't understand what that meant. She was manipulating you, he muttered to himself. She was hiding something. She had to go. Still, he couldn't sleep either. Something felt off. The house felt heavier now, emptier, and the boy's soft cries from the next room only made it worse. The next morning, while making coffee, he walked toward the cupboard. Just out of curiosity, he opened it again. Same as before, just the cans. But this time, something caught his eye. A small corner of paper sticking out behind the top shelf. He reached in and pulled it out. It was an old, folded letter. The handwriting on it was familiar. His hand began to shake. It was his late wife's handwriting, and it was addressed to the nanny. His heart started to beat faster. He stared at the paper in his hand, suddenly realizing that maybe, just maybe, he had made a terrible mistake. The letter in his hand was old but clear. The handwriting was soft and full of care, his late wife's handwriting. His eyes froze on the words. To her, if you're reading this, it means you're still here. Thank you. I know I didn't have much time, and I never got to say goodbye the right way. But I trust you. I've seen how he smiles when you're around. I've seen how you care. Please take care of my son. Read him my letters, one each night. Help him remember my voice, even if I'm gone. He sat down at the kitchen table. His legs felt weak. The paper trembled in his hand. He read it again and again. The words cut deep. This nanny. She wasn't a stranger. She was someone his wife trusted. Someone his son loved. And someone he had thrown out, just like that. He felt a strange mix of anger at himself and confusion. Why hadn't she told him? Why didn't she explain? Then he remembered the way she had looked at him when he fired her. She had wanted to speak but chose silence. Maybe because she thought he wouldn't believe her. Maybe because she respected the bond he once had with his wife and didn't want to force her presence into their life. Maybe she thought her promise to his wife was more important than her own comfort. He stood up and opened the cupboard again. There had to be more. He took out all the cans, pulled off the old shelf paper, and then knocked gently on the back wall of the cupboard. One part of the wood sounded hollow. He pressed harder, and the panel gave way. Behind it was a small metal box. He pulled it out with shaking hands. It was cold, covered in dust. He opened it carefully. Inside were dozens of letters written in the same soft handwriting. Each one had a date and a little heart drawn in the corner. He pulled out the top one. My sweet boy, if today was hard, don't worry. Tomorrow is waiting with open arms. If you miss me, just listen to the stars. They'll whisper the same lullaby I used to sing. His eyes filled with tears. He couldn't breathe. These were letters his wife had written for their son before she passed. Letters filled with love, comfort, and motherly warmth. She had prepared these letters knowing she wouldn't be there to watch him grow. And the nanny, she had been reading one each night. That's what his son meant when he said she read mommy letters. The father fell to the floor, holding the letter to his chest. He had judged too quickly. He had let suspicion blind him. He had fired the one person who was giving his son the only piece of his mother left. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. He quickly wiped his eyes and walked to the front of the house. When he opened the door, he found the old building manager standing there with an envelope. This was left for you. The man said. It was from the nanny. He opened it, his hand still shaking. I'm sorry for not telling you everything. I didn't want to step over boundaries. I promised her I'd be there for your son, not to make things harder for you. The cupboard wasn't mine to explain, it was hers. I only followed what she asked. I didn't want your son to forget the love she left behind. I didn't come for money. I came because I cared. He couldn't believe it. She never asked for anything. She never defended herself. She just left. And now he was left with nothing but guilt. That night, he sat beside his sleeping son. He watched the child's chest rise and fall. There was peace on that little face, and he realized that peace wasn't from him. It was from her. From the nanny. From the letters. From a promise kept by someone who didn't have to. He knew what he had to do. He couldn't undo what happened, but maybe it wasn't too late to make things right. The next morning, the father woke up with a heavy heart. The house felt even quieter now. Too quiet. There was no gentle humming from the kitchen. No sound of soft footsteps walking down the hall. And worst of all, no warm laugh that had once brought his son peace. His son sat silently at the breakfast table, playing with his spoon, not touching the food. There was a sadness in his eyes that the father hadn't seen before, a kind of silence no toy could fix. "Do you want pancakes?" the father asked, trying to lift the mood. The boy shook his head slowly. "Can you read me the letter tonight?" he asked softly, eyes not meeting his father's. "What letter?" the man asked, even though he already knew. "The ones Mommy left. The ones she used to read." The father took a breath. He walked into the kitchen and opened the cupboard. Again, the small metal box was still there. He picked one letter carefully and read the date. It was for today. He brought it to the table and began reading aloud. As the soft words left his mouth, something strange happened. His son stopped fidgeting. He listened. His eyes looked calm again. By the time the letter ended, the boy was smiling. Faintly. The father looked at him and saw a piece of his wife in that small smile. Later that day, he made up his mind. He needed to find the nanny. He needed to tell her everything. She had done nothing wrong, only kept a promise made out of love. And he had broken that trust in seconds. He searched her records, called the agency, even asked the building manager again. Finally, someone gave him a small address. It was across town, in an older, quieter area. Without waiting, he drove there. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows on the street. He found the building a small place, worn from time. But neat. He knocked on the door. No answer. He knocked again. Still nothing. Just as he turned to leave, the door opened halfway. She stood there, her eyes tired, her face calm, but there was a hint of hurt in her expression. She didn't speak. He didn't know how to start. "I read the letter," he finally said. Her eyes widened just slightly. "The one my wife left for you," he added. Still, she said nothing. "I found the box, the letters. I know everything. Now," he continued, "you were keeping a promise. You were protecting him, and his voice cracked. "I accused you. I hurt you. I fired you like you were nothing." Tears started to rise in his eyes, but he held them back. "I'm not here to defend what I did," he said. "I just want to say I'm sorry." There was silence. Then she opened the door fully. "I didn't stay for you," she said softly. "I stayed for him, because she asked me to." "I know," he nodded. "And he needs you. I see it now. I can't replace what you gave him." She looked away for a moment, her fingers holding the door nervously. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he added. "But if you ever decide to come back, not just as a nanny, but as someone important in his life, there will always be a place for you." She took a deep breath, then asked one quiet question. "Did you read today's letter?" He nodded. "I did. It helped both of us." She smiled just a little and replied, "That's all I wanted." He didn't pressure her. He gave her time. Before he left, he handed her something small, a drawing his son made that morning. It was a stick figure family, a father, a son, and the nanny holding hands. Above it, in shaky writing, the boy had written, "Come back, we miss you." She held the paper gently, and for the first time since that painful night, her eyes softened. As he walked away, he didn't feel peace. Not yet, but he felt hope. Hope that some bonds, even if shaken, could still be mended, and hope that maybe love still lived in the quiet corners of their lives, like a letter hidden in a cupboard, waiting to be found. The days passed slowly. Each night, the father sat beside his son's bed, holding one of the letters from the tin box. His voice trembled at times as he read, but he kept going. The boy listened quietly, sometimes smiling, sometimes closing his eyes and pretending his mother was still there beside him. It wasn't easy. The house still felt too big, too quiet. And the empty chair at the dining table, the one where the nanny used to sit, felt like a loud reminder of everything he'd broken. He wanted her back. Not just for his son, but because he had finally seen her for who she really was. She wasn't just a helper. She was a quiet guardian, a hidden thread that had held his little family together when it was falling apart. One rainy afternoon, he heard the doorbell. He opened it, and there she stood, holding a small bag. She didn't say anything at first. She just looked at him, calm but serious. "I'm not here for the job," she said gently. "I'm here for him." He nodded, his heart full. "That's more than enough." His son came running from the hallway when he heard her voice. "You came back," he cried, wrapping his little arms around her waist. She knelt and hugged him tightly, her eyes filled with emotion. "I told you I'd be there, didn't I?" That evening, the house felt different. The soft humming returned, the warmth returned, and the boy, he laughed again. A full, happy laugh that hadn't been heard in weeks. Later that night, after the boy had fallen asleep, the nanny stood quietly in the kitchen, looking at the cupboard. The father walked in, watching her. "I never asked you," he said quietly. "Why that cupboard? Why hide the letters there?" She looked down, then replied, "Because it was her favorite place. She told me once, before she got sick, that whenever she cooked, she'd keep little notes in there. Old recipes, baby drawings, even grocery lists. She said it felt like a small memory box." The father's eyes softened. He remembered that too. His wife used to hide handwritten notes for him behind the spice jars, love messages, silly jokes, dreams about their son's future. She wanted her words to stay close, the nanny continued, close to the heart of the home. The father nodded, his throat tight. "And you kept it alive." "I just followed her wishes," she said. "I didn't know if I was doing enough, but your son." He listened. He held on to every word. The father looked at the cupboard again. It was old, scratched, and didn't match the rest of the modern kitchen. "But now it meant everything. She trusted you more than anyone," he said softly. "I see why now." There was silence for a moment. Then he asked, "Why didn't you tell me sooner, about the letters, about her wish?" She looked at him, not angry, just honest. "Because you were hurting," she said. "And sometimes people in pain don't listen. I didn't want to force something on you while you were still learning how to breathe without her." That truth hit him hard. He realized then it wasn't that she didn't trust him. It's that she understood grief better than he did. She had carried the weight for both of them. Silently, "I'm still learning," he said, "but I want to do better." The next day, the three of them sat together at the table. The boy colored quietly while the nanny folded his tiny socks. The father read another letter out loud, this one about the day his son was born. "You came into this world screaming louder than any baby on the floor," he read, smiling through the lump in his throat. "But the moment they placed you in my arms, you stopped. You just looked at me. And in that moment, I knew you were going to be okay." He paused. His son looked up, curious. "Was I really loud?" The father laughed. "You still are." They all smiled. And for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like something was missing. It felt whole. Not perfect, but whole. Later that evening, the father walked into the kitchen alone. He opened the cupboard, placed a small notebook inside, and wrote something on the front cover. "Letters from Dad." He smiled. It was his turn now. Days slowly turned into weeks. The house, once filled with cold silence, now felt alive again. There were still quiet moments, but they weren't lonely anymore. They were peaceful. Each night, the boy would bring a folded letter to his father and climb into bed. Together, they would read it, one of the precious notes written by his mother. Sometimes they laughed, sometimes they cried. But always, they felt her there, in her words, in the love she had left behind. And when the last letter from the box was read, there was a moment of stillness. The boy held the letter close to his chest and whispered, "Thank you, Mommy." The father kissed his forehead. "She's proud of you," he said. That night, he brought out the small notebook he had placed inside the cupboard. It was time for something new. He sat at the table, pen in hand, and wrote the first page. Dear son, if you ever feel sad, remember this. You were never alone. You had the love of a mother who wrote to you from her heart. And now you have me, and I'm learning how to write too. He smiled at his own shaky handwriting and closed the book. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was honest. And that's all that mattered now. The nanny stayed, not as an employee, not as a guest. She became part of the family in a quiet, natural way. She helped with meals, read bedtime stories, and took long walks with the boy in the park. She smiled more now, and so did the father. He respected her deeply, not just for what she had done, but for how she had done it, with silence, kindness, and strength. One morning while folding laundry, the boy ran to her and asked, "Were you Mommy's best friend?" She paused for a moment, then smiled. "Yes, I was, and now I'm yours too." He grinned and hugged her tight. The father stood in the doorway, watching them. He no longer saw her as the woman who once opened a cupboard in secret. Now he saw her as the woman who helped his son feel loved again, who held his family together when he was too broken to see it. Later that evening, he walked into the kitchen. With something in his hands, a small wooden frame, he placed it on top of the cupboard. Inside was a photo. One of his wife, holding their baby boy. She looked happy, calm, full of light. Below the photo he had placed a small message carved in wood. This was her place, her letters, her love. Always with us. The nanny stood beside him and looked at the frame. Her eyes glistened, but she said nothing. No words were needed. The boy's voice echoed from the other room. "Are we reading Daddy's letter tonight?" The father smiled. "Yes, son, every night." He had started writing a new letter each day. Some were stories, some were thoughts, some were silly, but all were written with love. Just like she had done. And in doing so, he finally felt connected, not just to his son, but to the woman he had lost. Her cupboard, once just a piece of old wood, had become a symbol of memory, of hope, and of healing. One night, as they sat on the couch, the father turned to the nanny. "I don't think I ever told you how grateful I am." She looked at him, surprised. "You didn't have to," she said softly. "But I want to," he replied. "You kept a promise no one else knew about. You stood in the storm. You gave my son more than comfort. You gave him love." She looked down and said, "I only did what she asked." "No," he said gently. "You did much more." There was a pause. Then he added, "Your family now." Tears filled her eyes. Sometimes love doesn't come loudly. It doesn't arrive with big moments or grand speeches. Sometimes it hides quietly in a cupboard, waiting to be found.